Hello, BBN. This guy from Louisville just gave the Kentucky guys a boost to win this game. Let's see the news. First, subscribe to the channel to receive more news. The rivalry between Kentucky and Louisville, known as the Battle of the Bluegrass, is one of those duels that transcends college basketball and transforms into a true narrative of regional pride, tradition, and passion. And this time, with Louisville's center Cassian Pryor directly provoking the Wildcats before the matchup, there's an added ingredient of spice in this already simmering classic. Pryor's audacious comment after the Cardinals' crushing victory over Jackson State not only echoed through the media and social networks, but also served as powerful fuel for Kentucky, further raising the stakes for the game that promises to be one of the decisive moments of the season. See you Tuesday after a win. These words, uttered by Pryor as he left the post-game press conference, were more than just a careless taunt. They carry the weight of a bold, almost arrogant confidence that didn't go unnoticed by fans or the Kentucky team. For many, it may have been an attempt to project confidence or motivate his own teammates. But in the context of the intense rivalry between these two programs, they sounded like a direct challenge, and the Wildcats certainly won't ignore it. Pryor's comment has the potential to work as a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it fuels the energy of the Louisville crowd, who are already chanting "Defeat Kentucky" at the Center while celebrating their victory against Jackson State. The atmosphere in the stadium will be incandescent, especially since the Cardinals are seeking their first win over the Wildcats since 2020, when Chris Mack was the program's coach. Pat Kelsey, the current Louisville coach, knows how much this triumph would mean not only for the team, but also to reinforce his own legacy in the face of the constant pressure that accompanies this duel. On the other hand, however, Pryor's words may have provided Kentucky with exactly the kind of extra motivation a talented team like the Wildcats needs to elevate its level of execution. Mark Pope, always calculating and strategic in his approaches, will likely use this provocation as a psychological trump card in the locker room. Kentucky players now have something very clear to prove. Not only that they are technically superior, but that pre-game arrogance rarely finds space when the ball goes up and the scoreboard starts counting. For a program like Kentucky, accustomed to dealing with high expectations and external criticism, this type of provocation tends to further solidify team spirit and collective determination. Kentucky fans, known for their unwavering loyalty and fierce pride, will certainly turn these words into a mantra during the game. Every contested rebound, every made shot, and every crucial save will take on an even more personal tone, as if the entire team were directly responding to Pryor and Louisville's ambitions. It's not uncommon for inflammatory statements like this to become a weapon in the opponent's hands, and everything indicates that Kentucky will do everything to ensure that Pryor and the Cardinals feel the weight of their own words. Furthermore, it's worth remembering that recent history favors the Wildcats. Mark Pope, in his brief stint as Kentucky's coach, has yet to lose to Louisville under Pat Kelsey. This advantage, combined with renewed confidence after the arrival of new talent to the program, gives the Wildcats a solid foundation to face the matchup calmly. However, history teaches us that no game between these rivals can be considered guaranteed. The emotional tension and symbolic weight of these matches often outweigh any purely technical analysis. As the countdown to the confrontation continues, it's clear that this year's Battle of the Bluegrass goes beyond the sporting aspect. It's a clash of egos, traditions, and mentalities, and Cassian Pryor, perhaps without fully realizing it, has added fuel to the fire. It remains to be seen whether Louisville can back up their center's bravado, or if Kentucky will use these words as ammunition to further solidify their historic supremacy over the Cardinals. One thing is certain. When the ball goes up on Tuesday, all eyes will be on the KFC Center, where college basketball will witness another epic chapter in one of the country's most passionate rivalries. Cam Williams' current situation at Kentucky is a clear example of the complexity involved in transitioning to a high-level program and the weight of expectations that accompany players of his caliber. Projected by many as a possible first-round pick in the NBA draft after his solid run at Tulane, where he consistently averaged 9 points with impressive 48% field goal percentage and 41% three-point percentage, Williams arrived in Lexington surrounded by optimism. The promise was that he would flourish even more under Mark Pope, whose modern offensive style seemed to perfectly suit Williams' versatile profile. However, the start of the season has been challenging for the young player, generating doubts among fans and analysts. And although the current numbers are not encouraging, there's a growing consensus that this is just the initial chapter in his journey. The numbers so far, it's true, are worrying. In 4 games played, including the blue-white game and matchups against Purdue, Georgetown, and Nicholls State, Williams has accumulated statistics that hardly reflect his attributed potential. A field goal percentage of just 20% and an alarming 0 to 7 on three-point attempts indicate that something is still not working. Furthermore, his offensive production has been practically non-existent in some games, such as the loss against Georgetown, where he finished with 0 points and 0 shots. For a team with aspirations as high as Kentucky's, these limited contributions may seem frustrating at first glance, especially considering the depth of the available roster. However, Mark Pope, always thoughtful in his analyses, has publicly defended the player, reiterating his confidence in Williams' talent. During a recent press conference, Pope contextualized the slow start as a natural part of the adaptation process to elite college basketball. "I don't know if it's because of playing at this level," Pope said, referring to the transition to Kentucky. "It's that our players are getting in sync, and that's going to happen with every team in the country. There's a process of trying to figure out how to fit in and what works." This realistic, yet optimistic view highlights that Williams' talent hasn't disappeared. He's simply still in the adjustment phase. And adjustments, it's worth remembering, are part of the game. College basketball, especially in a program like Kentucky's, demands that players not only master the technical and physical aspects of the sport, but also develop a resilient and adaptable mindset. For Williams, this means better understanding the pace of a game within the context of Pope's system, which prioritizes a high volume of three-point shots and constant movement. So far, everything seems to be happening too fast for him, as admitted by the coach himself. But this feeling of overload tends to diminish as the player gains confidence and familiarity with his teammates and the implemented tactics. Furthermore, it's important to recognize that a player's impact goes beyond immediate numbers. Williams has already shown glimpses of his defensive and rebounding abilities, areas where he can contribute even when shots aren't falling. His physical and technical versatility remains intact, and these qualities will be fundamental in making him a reliable piece of the roster. His work in indoor training has also been encouraging, according to reports from the coaching staff, suggesting that the current problem may be more mental than technical. Pope, known for his patience and ability to develop players, is betting on this transformation. He stated categorically, "Cam has enormous potential. He's going to be a fantastic player." These words carry weight, coming from an experienced coach who has witnessed the growth of athletes under pressure on numerous occasions. The underlying message is clear: patience will be rewarded. Will Cam Williams become a 20-point per game star? Probably not, and perhaps that was never the realistic expectation for him this season. But that doesn't diminish his importance within Pope's project. Over time, Williams should find his place as a reliable shooter and a versatile option within the system, capable of creating space for his teammates and capitalizing on opportunities created by collective movement. When that happens, his presence will be significantly felt, both in the decisive moments of matches and in the overall balance of the squad. He still has a lot of room to grow. Envy your feedback. Pene's later race. Historico. Salvas. Use as cetas para ver tragicao completa. Time demands not only results from leaders, but also the courage to know when to change. Mitch Barnhart, one of the most enduring and respected figures in college athletics, now faces the dilemma that defines legacies. To what extent is loyalty to Mark Stoops, the man who helped rebuild Kentucky football, becoming an obstacle to the program's own evolution? Barnhart is undoubtedly one of the most competent athletic directors of his generation. Under his leadership, Kentucky went from irrelevance in several sports to becoming one of the most complete athletic departments in the SEC. He was the architect of shrewd signings, such as John Calipari in basketball, Nick Mingione in baseball, and, more recently, Kenny Brooks in women's basketball. He built a solid structure, modernized facilities, elevated the UK athletics brand, and made Lexington a point of reference on the national sports map. But there is a clear blind spot in this trajectory, and he wears sideline headphones. Mark Stoops is simultaneously the symbol of Barnhart's success and the epicenter of its current crisis. The relationship between the two transcends professional hierarchy. It's more than 10 years of partnership, trust, and complicity, a relationship forged in historic victories, but also in storms that almost destroyed them both. It was Barnhart who kept Stoops in 2016, when the coach seemed destined for dismissal after a disastrous start. And it was this decision, against all odds, that changed the fate of American football in Kentucky. The problem is that time transforms loyalty into a burden. Stoops, today, is a coach who seems trapped between a glorious past and a stagnant present. The program has stagnated, results have dwindled, and the brilliance of 10-win seasons has faded under the shadow of 10 consecutive home losses in the SEC. The numbers are cruel: 70 wins, 78 losses, and a 34-62 record in the conference. The curve, which once pointed upwards, now seems leveled, or worse, descending. Still, Barnhart shows no hurry to act. His recent statements reveal an almost paternal tone toward Stoops. When he says that a one-year stumble is no reason to break up, he's not just defending a coach, he's defending his own history. Because for Mitch, Stoops isn't just another coach. He's living proof that he was right to believe in stability when everyone else was calling for change. He's the unsung trophy of the athletic director who preferred the long term to instant solutions. But today's college sports are unforgiving. The NIL era and the transfer portal have transformed the game. The margin for loyalty has diminished. What was once a virtue, giving time for growth, now sounds like hesitation. The fan who filled Kroger Field, hoping for a rising program, is beginning to wonder if the future still lies there. Some say Barnhart is a victim of his own success. He built such a functional and professional structure in Kentucky that the current mediocrity seems all the more glaring. The fan, accustomed to dreaming, now feels trapped in the same cycle. Good stories, but no victories that truly change the team's level. The embrace between Barnhart and Stoops after the victory over Auburn, a hard-fought win against an opponent that fired its coach hours later, is the symbolic portrait of this relationship. Two men celebrating the past when the future demands urgency. The image is beautiful, but also unsettling, because by all indications, the question is no longer whether Stoops deserves another chance, but whether Barnhart will have the courage to break a bond that defines his career. There are undeniable merits. Under his management, Kentucky became a consistent bowl program, something unthinkable 15 years ago. He created a culture of responsibility and discipline that pulled American football out of the abyss. But every story has a point where what was once built becomes complacency. And perhaps Kentucky is experiencing exactly that moment. Mitch Barnhart is, above all, a man of values. Loyalty to his coaches, care for the department, and institutional defense of the university are rare virtues in times of pragmatism. But college sports, more than ever, demand results. And if his friendship with Stoops prevents him from making the decision the program needs, his legacy, which today is one of stability and greatness, could end up tarnished by hesitation. History will judge not only what Barnhart built, but what he allowed to remain. And if there is one lesson in all these years at Kentucky under his leadership, it is that greatness is not maintained solely through loyalty. Sometimes it requires detachment. Share your opinion.